Power Hour with John Lee.
Welcome to the Power Hour. I'm John Lee, and today we're going to smash it. I'm going to hit it because I'm trying to get the idea across of partners in crime. I'm not trying to educate anyone. I'm just trying to get everything that I want to get in to the hour, because it's a power hour, you know. Some people have a more relaxing vibe. I just don't operate like that personally. So what I'm going to do, I'm focusing on the perfect storm. There's a particular French expression, folie à deux, meaning basically the madness of two. And what we're looking at is when two people come together and they kind of share the same fucked up reality, and they kind of motivate each other, or one dominates the other, and the different relationships that we've seen. And what I've done is I haven't picked out, well, the ones that I picked out for me are interesting relationships, not just the crimes. And many of them are regarded by some as crimes of the century, you know. What fascinates me is the dynamic. The crimes are interesting, but the dynamic that creates the crime. So let's just boom into the room. I've got Bonnie and Clyde. You've got to go with Bonnie and Clyde. But behind the romanticism of it, not the romance, because that's fundamental, it is a true romance story. But it's kind of romanticised into Hollywood lore, you know. But what did we have really? Right, we had a poor boy and a kind of, well, and in that context, middle class girl. So Clyde, he really had nothing. He grew up in not even a one horse town. They did not have a horse in that town. It was really, really dank. It was desperate. It was dirty. It was grotty. It was mean. And that's where he grew up. And his older brother was a thief. And so he kind of grew into that, Clyde. And I suppose he found he had a talent for it. And he wasn't stupid, but he just had no opportunities in life, you know. And so he learned how to steal. And he became very good at it. And he was a good driver. He was a good thief. He was intelligent, he was charismatic, he was charming. And Bonnie was his, you know, soon-to-be star-crossed lover. And what do we know about her? Well, she grew up with more than he did, but still with very little. She was quite pretty and attractive, small. I don't think she was 5 foot tall. We're not talking about ancient history. This is 100 years ago. There were plenty of big people at that time. She was just a small person, you know. And she was, but she was intelligent, and she was into her poetry. But she did get married before she met Clyde. He was called Roy, and he was what they used to call a rotter. You know, he used to leave her all the time. He left her at least 3 times, and he used to beat her. You know, anytime she tried to call him out for any of his behaviour, he used to give her a backhander and all that. And I suppose those were the days, and you know, when you wouldn't get locked up for it. You definitely wouldn't get locked up for that. Thankfully, that's not the case anymore. So what happened? They met, and when they met, of course, Clyde, he was more established. He had a good suit and a nice car, but the car was stolen. But so what? To them, you know, that was the thing. Have you got it or not? Because in this life and in this world that they were living, that's all it is. If you don't steal it, you don't get it. Because no one's going to, not only will they not give it to you, but they won't allow you to go and get it either. So that's kind of me trying to understand how they fell into that lifestyle. And then Clyde Rooney gets nicked, as we say in England. He gets arrested, and he's doing hard time as it used to be, proper rock breaking, you know, just for the sake of breaking rocks. And it's torture, and he's got something like 15 years to do. He's only a pup, and he's got 15 years to get through of this torture, you see. And he's also getting raped, you know, by this big bully who was over 6 feet tall and a good deal older than him. Now, he'd already been in prison, and it was actually Bonnie broke him out. Yeah, brought a gun in and all that, and broke him out of prison, him and others. So he was in and out of jail, but this is like his big one. He was going down for this. And he's doing his time, he's breaking rocks, and she's madly in love with him. And I think he with her as well. It really does seem to come through in what I've read, that they were actually in love. It wasn't just a question of crime or notoriety, because they didn't get any really while they were actually doing it. They were like painters in that sense. They didn't really become famous until after they were killed, although they did get a lot of local press and some national attention in the end. So anyway, he can't hack it, as we say. He can't handle it. He can't do it. And you know, I understand that. And he's trying to break all these rocks every day, and it's just, there's more rocks when you get up the next morning, and it's just shit. And this guy's raping him. He's beating him up, you know. And so he goes to a lifer, you know. He goes to his cellmate, and he says, fucking chop my toes off. Right? So I don't know how he did it. Foot up, I suppose, axe. Chopped 2 of his toes off so he could get put into the hospital, into the medical ward, and not have to go back out into the field. And that worked, and they put him in the hospital and all that. But, you know, you're talking like pre-anaesthesia. It's just pain and blood, isn't it, that? And so he's in the hospital, and then he finds out that his mother has been campaigning to get him pardoned. And she succeeded. So they pardoned him. He's only just chopped his toes off. And they said, right, you can go. So he hobbles out of the jail, you know, minus a couple of toes. And he's limping them for the rest of his life. Anyway, they hook up, Bonnie and Clyde, and they, you know, they're kind of part of a gang. It's really Clyde's gang, but she's in it. And they're going round all over the place stealing. And they shoot anyone who gets in the way. And Clyde, what he does is he steals from the armories. So they're keeping weapons in these armories. And he's going breaking in. And he's stealing the proper tackle. I don't know what they're called. But, you know, the beasting guns of the day, they were machine guns, I think, automatics. Boom, 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 boom style guns. And he's stealing Ford V8s, which were tremendously powerful, fast cars at the time, much, much faster than the law enforcement's equivalent. And so they're trying to chase, you know, this criminal gang, and they can't get anywhere near them. Fuck off. They're down the road. And if they do catch them, they've got pistols, the cops. They've got pistols, you know, and they're facing proper gunfire. So they were serious criminals, Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie actually did some time in her own right. She was in prison for a while, about 6 months, I think. And she wrote a lot of poetry and kind of infused it with the kind of, I don't know, gangster chat of the day and of the region. And so they started to draw some attention. They were getting in the newsreels before the films in the cinemas. You know, watch out for these two. But this was in the era of John Dillinger and Babyface Nelson and people like that, who were on a much higher level in every way, and making a lot more money, and they were a lot more famous and a lot more glamorous. And it was only during this kind of the hunt was on for them, and the police went to a place where they were, and they brought, like as I say, pistols, and they were totally outmatched, outgunned. And I think 2 of them got killed, and yeah, one of them got proper peppered, like, you know, as we say, pepper pot shot, and he died. And so at that point they go into the flat where they've been, because they have to escape, and this is where they find all these photographs. And there was a kind of a feeling that this girl had been taken away by this guy, you know, like this kind of sexist idea, in my view, that if a woman does something negative, it's because she's being controlled by a man. She doesn't have the agency or the power in herself to decide what she's doing if it's bad. It must have been the guy who made her do it. You know, if she writes a book with him, then you can't say, oh, well, the man wrote the book and she was just there. But if she robs a bank, then, well, the man robbed the bank and she was just there. And I just think that's very sexist. She did it because she wanted to fucking do it. And you can see it in the photographs. You know, she's posing, she's loving it. She looks comfortable with the weapons, to say the least, you know. And they were gangsters. And so J. Edgar Hoover, psychotic bastard that he was, but he might have been right in this case, he says, right, I'm going after him. And he gets this guy called Frank Hamer, who's a former Texas Ranger. You don't fuck with them boys. And he'd already killed 53 people. Imagine that. Imagine a cop who'd already killed 53 people. Already shot and killed 53 people. And he got this Frank Hamer and sent him down there hunting for Bonnie and Clyde. And this was not to arrest them. They had no intention of arresting Bonnie and Clyde, not at all. And so they tracked them professionally, and they found them, and they waited in a field, and when they appeared, they came out, Frank Hamer and his deputies, bam, 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 bam. They shot the car 150 times. They put 150 bullets into the car. I mean, they took, you know, they shot people up so much, the fucking arms fell off, you know. Really, really bad. And that's the story of Bonnie and Clyde. So what's interesting about that for me and the world is how two young people, quite intelligent people, came together and just decided that this is what we need to do. And that kind of violence and crime unified them. It's that us against the world, you know. And these are the extremes that we have to go to ensure our future together. And they won't let us go and live in a nice little house and raise a family and have a dog. They won't let us do that. They're going to chase us until we die. So we're going to, you know, kind of live out the fantasy of the Romeo and Juliet on acid with guns and bullets. You know, we're going to die, but we're going to die together. And we're going to have the most exciting time possible in the process. And I think that's what it was. And I think it was entirely mutual. And actually, just to tell you, they killed 13 people. How many did he kill? How many did she kill? I don't know. But they killed 13 people, which is quite a lot, obviously. Did a lot of bank robberies and a lot of crimes in general, a lot of theft, car theft and all that. So they were proper criminals. And I think they were genuinely bound by a mutual desire to be together. So that's one dynamic. I'm going to bounce around to my neck of the woods now with Hindley and Brady. Now, these people still cast a shadow, and I'll get back to what I mean by that. They're from Manchester. Well, she's from Manchester, Myra Hindley. And Ian Brady is Scottish. He was from Glasgow. They're both dead now. But they met in Manchester. She was from Gorton, and a tough old town, Manchester. It's a city, you know, but it's tough. You know what I mean? It's a mill town. The British Empire collapsed in just before the middle of the last century, and the economy just, you know, fell through the floor, and the consequences are there to be seen now. I mean, they still film much of Peaky Blinders in Manchester because it looks the same as it fucking did 100 years ago in certain areas. That's because no investment's gone in there at all. And so this is the area that they occupied. Tough place. And Myra Hindley's father was an ex-soldier. He was a boxer. He was a fighter. He was quite a bad man, and he was cruel to her. He was cruel to Myra Hindley. Ian Brady came from Glasgow, another very, very tough place. Similar story with the shipping industry and all that. And he was a thief growing up. I mean, you know, okay, who wasn't in those circumstances, I suppose. And anyway, they met in really drab circumstances. He was a bookkeeper. She was working just in a factory, possibly in the office. I can't remember really. But when they met, she was obsessed with him. She was attracted to him because he was aloof. She got a lot of attention from the boys, Myra. But then when she met Ian Brady, he didn't seem to want to know. And so she chased him. And they got together, and he was obsessed with Hitler and Nietzsche. And so they've got this kind of Superman obsession. The Superman theory, obviously not, you know, truth, justice in the American way, but the idea that there are people among us who are special and different and don't have to play by the rules and can do literally whatever they want because they are above the rest of humanity and mankind. And, of course, people who believe that always select themselves as being proof of it. And Ian Brady did that. And he kind of brought her into it. And they decided somewhere along the way that the best thing to do was to be fucking evil. Evil. Right? And they went out and they started picking up kids. Now, they already devised a plan based on the idea that no kid was going to get in a car with Ian Brady. Shady bastard that he was. But they would get in a car with a woman. So this is cynical in the worst way. They've planned it. and there was a girl called Pauline Reed that Myra Hindley knew, and so she pulled up in a car, and Brady's behind on the motorbike. Pauline, I've lost my glove on the moors. Right, and the moors is, you know, wildlands in the north of England. Very, very unforgiving place. And they take her up on this young girl, Pauline Reed, a child, and they take Pauline up onto the moors, and they rape her, and they murder her, and they bury her in the ground, and they take photographs of Myra Hindley kneeling on the grave. This is what they used to do, as a way of marking the grave, and also whatever sick shit these people conceive of in their brains, and they're smiling about it. And then John Kilbride goes, and then it's Leslie Ann Downey, and these are all children. Edward Evans was a bit older, he was 17, and fucking Ian Brady just beat him to death with a hatchet in the house. Just took a hatchet to him and hacked him up properly, and I think he was buried as well. And there was a guy there called David Smith who had his own criminal background, but he wasn't of that ilk at all, that type. And so he sees this bloodbath, and he can't handle it. His head pops, and he goes to the police, and he says, "I've just seen fucking massacre." You know, whatever he said was one person who's got it, but the blood apparently was just atrocious. And so the police go round, and during the investigation, they find recordings, and these recordings are something that I've heard once years ago. It was on a documentary I was watching. Fucking never again. And this is the thing. Myra Hindley always denied all knowledge. Or it was him. But when you listen to the audio, which I don't recommend, take my word for it, unless you're really, really strong. The girl is just begging for her life, and Myra Hindley is taunting her and torturing her. It's really fucking hideous. And so, you know, the fact that she then had kind of denied doing it, when you hear the tapes and realise who she really is, oh my God. I'm trying to block it out of my mind now while I'm saying it. It's terrible. It really is. So they're in prison. Well, I will mention this, right, and come back to it. The picture when they get arrested it went worldwide. And when you look at it, you can see why, especially Myra Hindley. And so they get arrested and they go to prison. They get fucking found guilty. They haven't got much of a case in their defence. And she's denying it and he's admitting it. And then it looks like she's going to get out of prison. And it's in the papers. And there's getting a movement behind her because women are going to visit Myra Hindley in prison. And she's convincing them that she's a really nice person and or she was innocent. And there's a movement to get her out of prison, and people are starting to take it seriously, very seriously. And, you know, it wasn't really her, it was him, she was brainwashed and all that. So Ian Brady gets wind of this, and he says, actually, we've killed more than that, and she did it with me, and she knows where the bodies are, and she's been lying all this time, and I can prove it, which he did. With the photos, because when they went to the places where she was photographed smiling, kneeling on the ground, looking at the ground, she's carrying a dog in one. That's the grave of one of the children that they'd never mentioned killing, and she's smiling at the grave. So all that time she was just as bad as him, or maybe even worse, because she knew that as a woman, children will trust me. So I'm going to get in a car and I'm going to have this beast behind me, this psychotic maniac on a fucking motorbike behind me. Boys and girls, I don't care. We'll take them up onto the woods and do the most heinous shit that anybody could ever do. And then we'll do it again, and then we'll do it again. And then I'll lie about it for years and I'll blame him and say it was just him when it wasn't me. And then when the tapes are found, I'll fucking, you know, skive my way around that in some way. And then when I'm finally busted, I'll admit it. And she starts saying, oh, well, I'll help you. And she did to some extent, just in an effort to get out of jail. But fuck that. They didn't get out of prison. They wouldn't allow each other, really, to get out of prison. People are still searching for the bodies. I mean, that's how deep this shit cuts. And they died in jail. But not in the way that many people would have liked to seen them die, you know. I don't know, maybe force them to beat each other to death with a bat. Might be appropriate. But when I was a child, As I've mentioned, I'm from Manchester, and the moors border Manchester. I was born in the 70s. This happened in the 60s, so it's a good 10 years later. And I mean, I didn't even become conscious of them until mid-80s, maybe. I'd have been 8 or 9 or something like that when I started going further away from my house. And the shadow of these fucking maniacs loomed large over Manchester 20 years later. And I had the image of Myra Hindley with the hair and the eyes, the dead eyes like that, burnt into my consciousness. And you can see the moors from particular places where I used to go. And I mean, it's so dark and forbidding and cold and wet and rainy, cloudy, and you know death lives up there. Oh, it was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And that was fucking decades after it happened. So what's the situation with them? I think I don't know, but I'm thinking that he was warped and evil, pure evil. And I think she had an evil inside her that maybe he was able to awaken. Maybe he instilled it. I don't know. I haven't got the knowledge. But she was evil. She became evil. And so did he. And I don't know, which happened first. Was he evil? Were they both evil when they met? Was she hiding it better than him? I don't know. But they were evil. That was two dark forces coming together to create a black hole of devastating evil that fucked people's lives up forever. Multi-generational damage done by those bastards. So they're on a different playing field to Bonnie and Clyde, in my opinion. They're evil. I don't think Bonnie and Clyde were. Thankfully, I can stop talking about that shit and move on to two people who did something horrible. But it's not as bad as Bonnie and Clyde, as Myra Hindley and Ian Brady. Leopold and Loeb. Who were those crazy kids? Well, there's a film made about them by Alfred Hitchcock. And by the way, Hindley and Brady killed 5 people, but the kids. Leopold and Loeb did 1 murder. So why are they on the list? Well, because it was supposed to be the crime of the century. Still, many people regard it as that to this day. So they were both rich kids, super rich kids. And extremely gifted, intellectually off the chart, both of them. But one of them, who was massively underestimated, was Loeb. He was handsome. He was like the genius David Beckham. I mean, he was really, really good looking, tremendously charismatic and phenomenally intelligent. And Leopold was not any of that, apart from the intelligent part. And they were gay lovers, all right, which was kind of very much frowned on at the time. Not something that you mentioned in public, although they must have had parties. And they were into this kind of Superman theory as well. In fact, Ian Brady made Myra Hindley read a book about Leopold and Loeb and their obsession with this Superman theory, which was propagated by Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, and which was the basis really of Nazi ideology. And so they had an intellectual grounding in their own superiority. And I think that Leopold was obsessed with Loeb, in love with him. Do you know what I mean? And desperate to impress him. And they were kind of doing crimes because they knew they were intellectually superior. Soft asses, you could slap them both out like that, pa-bang, and leave them both on the deck. But they were very, very clever. And so they decided to exercise that in a way that titillated actually, that titillated them, and that went up to about arson. A bit of robbery, bit of vandalism, and up to arson. And I would say that Loeb was the boss through all this. And they decided to plan the perfect murder as an intellectual exercise. Apparently, we're going to plan and execute the perfect crime, one which cannot be detected, right? Because we're that clever. And so they choose a kid, about 14. Bobby Franks, his name was. Another posh kid. Nothing wrong with being posh. I'm just saying, he's a posh kid. And so he's walking down very nice areas where nobody would expect anything like this to happen. He's walking down the street, young Bobby Franks. He's a schoolboy. And these cats roll up in their car and they offer him a lift home. And of course, older boys, trendy, cool, wow, yeah, I'll get in your car. And they're giving him a lift and all that. And one of them, don't know who, starts smacking him with a blunt instrument, smacking this child with a blunt instrument. And they brutally murder him as part of their intellectual experiment. They brutally murder this child. And they wanted to get rid of the body, but for some reason they decided they needed to wait. Maybe they didn't want to go into the woods carrying the body in the daylight, so they wrapped it up and they stuffed the body in the back of the car. And they sat there eating sandwiches and whatnot, having lunch, waiting for it to go dark, with the dead body of a child in the back of the car, and they're, you know, hum-haring about how intellectually superior they are. Anyway, they take the body into the woods, into the place where they're going to hide the body, secluded area, and they douse the body in acid. You fucking hell, I mean, this is an intellectual exercise. You know, this sounds like more than just intellectual gratification to me. So they did that, horrendous as it is, and then they made the phone call. They phoned the family of the kid, the Franks, and told them, you know, we've kidnapped your son and there's a ransom which you need to pay. And then they went home happy with their work. But what Leopold had done, Captain Genius, he'd left his glasses at the scene, right? And the glasses were quite generic, but the screws in them weren't. There were only 3 people in Illinois, in the state of Illinois, or maybe just in Chicago area, that had these glasses, and the 2 others definitely didn't do it. So the police were taken directly to Leopold, even though they couldn't prove it. That's how they tracked him down, and that's how they got onto him. And they discovered the body. And, you know, I don't think there was that much evidence that they could get from the body. But with the glasses, the fact that they could connect the boy to them, and these glasses were found there. And then they found there was a note written as well, a kind of a ransom note demanding money. And they connected the note to, I think it was Leopold's typewriter. One of the 2 had a typewriter. And they proved that it came from that typewriter. So you've kidnapped the kid, you've brutally murdered him in the car, then you've thrown acid on him in the woods, you've left your glasses there, and you fucking used your own typewriter to type the note. And the whole point was that you're clever. Well, maybe you're fucking not. And the kid died for no reason. And so they went to trial. It was the biggest show trial of all time. Forget the O.J. Simpson one. This was massive. This was truly huge. And I mean, that's it. They were blaming each other left and right. Well, it was him, it wasn't me. He made me do it. No, he made me do it. It was all that kind of shit, ponces. And they go down to prison in the end, but they escaped the death penalty, and that was the big story. And Loeb, the handsome one, he got killed. He got slashed up in prison because he apparently was trying to force somebody to have sex with him. I don't know if that's true or not, but that was the story given by the inmate who killed him. And the big scandal as well was that Leopold, about 30 years later, after being a model prisoner and starting a school and a library in prison, they released him. And he lived as a free man. A lot of people didn't like that. But he did, yeah. He got out of prison, asked to be left alone, and carried on. So Leopold and Loeb, I mean, it's unusual because they're a gay couple. I don't think I can recall any incidents of gay couples killing people. And also that they were posh, really posh, so they had no need to commit crime. And the period in which it was done, and the crime itself, the killing of a schoolboy for fun, or an intellectual exercise, kind of masturbatory on many levels. So as a crime, it's entirely unique, that, in my opinion. And then so much so that Hitchcock made a film of it with the great James Stewart, the title of which I really don't want to stop to think of. So yeah, Leopold and Loeb, were they crazy? You tell me. I don't know. Certainly, you could definitely make a case for it. Now we're going to go to a crazy one. Really bad. Well, they're all bad, these. But interesting, to say the least. It's Helen Gulai and Olga Rutterschmidt. Now, they killed 2 people in LA. I don't know, last 20, 30 years, 90s. early 2000s. I mean, they were at large for a period of time. And Helen was American and Olga was Hungarian. And they killed a guy called Paul Varos in 1999, and they killed a guy called Ken McDavid in 2005. And these were homeless men, right? And they'd had their lives, and for some reason they'd ended up homeless. And what had happened was that Helen and Olga had gone to the homeless shelters down there in LA, in what's it called? The area of LA, Skid Row, where the homeless people live. And they go down and they're hitting this church and they're hitting this shelter, and they're going down there to help, you know, and they're convincing everybody that that's what they're there to do. And then they're taking these people in, they're taking these men in, and they tried it with a few, but they definitely achieved it with these two. So what they do is they take this homeless person in, they put him in accommodation, they feed him, they keep him more or less clean, certainly healthy, and they, at the same time, they open as many insurance policies as possible, up to 20 insurance policies, life insurance policies on this guy. And they keep him alive for a couple of years to throw off any suspicion. And one says that she's the cousin, one says that she's the girlfriend. On other forms, it says that they're all business partners. And then what they do is they take the victim, they drug him, right? However you drug people, crush it up, put it in the drink, put it in the food, whatever, knockout pills. And they drive out with the guy in the car like that, and they pull the guy out of the car, dump the guy in the road, and then they back up the car, I don't know, 40 metres, and they smash it back down the alley, and boom, right? They go right over him and crush him and kill him under the car. And then in one case, they phoned like an AA or a road help service, rescue service, because there's something wrong with the car, and got the car towed home. So I mean, the idea that you're gonna go to somebody and say, right, you're homeless, I'm not, I'm kind, I'm a good person, I'm going to look after you, I'm going to take you off the streets, I'm going to put you up, I'm going to feed you up, and I'm going to save your life basically and be a hero, and you just need to sign that. And if you don't sign it, you're out the door and back on the streets again, by the way. And you're going to feed them up and clean them and look after them, and I assume have some kind of relationship with them. And all the while, you're taking out these insurance policies because you know you're going to kill them. That's what it's all about, baby. You want the cash. And so when you spent enough time on that, then what do? You drive them out, you drug them, drive them out into an alleyway, push them out of the car, position them in the middle of the road, run over them in the car and kill them. And then you go and collect the cash, because that's what it was all about. Now, what's interesting about these two women, they're not in a relationship with each other. They're not, girlfriends, and they're not related. One's American, one's Hungarian. What's interesting about them is that they're both over 70 years of age. These are little old ladies, man. These are the last people in the world you would expect. They knew it, and they capitalised on it. Did they wait till they were old ladies before doing this shit? Because they wouldn't have got away with it before. But then they've looked at each other one day and thought, nobody would suspect us, would they? We could do this. We can kill people for the life insurance, but how are we going to go about it? So they've planned it all out in advance, you see. This is what's sickening about it. And so when they're being investigated eventually by the police, they never appeared together. They were tailing both, and they never saw them together, ever. So this is how professional, I'll mention that because this is how professional they were in their endeavours. They never got seen in the same place at the same time, so they could never be connected because they were engaged in this enterprise, and that's what it was. And what's amazing is that when they got arrested, I mean, one of them, the Helen Goliath, she's giving it the big and I'm innocent, I don't know what you're talking about, me, fraud, because he got arrested for fraud at first. She knows she's done double murder. Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Me? Yeah, you. Yeah, you and your mate. So they get arrested, and, you know, they were old ladies at the end of the day. So they've been taken into the interview room. The cops have left the interview room and left the cameras on. So they're in there, and the Olga beast from Hungary, she starts giving it to the other one. You were greedy. Right? You took too much. You're going to get sent down. You're going to be in prison. You know, they're going to send us both down because of you. And basically admits it on the camera. So I really don't know enough to say whether or not one was dominant. I think Olga seems in the conversation to be very aggressive, at least. But who manipulated who, or what the dynamic was, I don't really know. But the idea that you can get two psychopathic, psychotic old ladies who are not only able to kill people, but actually planning it for fucking years and carrying it out. I mean, if you were one old lady like that and you wanted to search the planet for another old lady who's just as fucking evil as you, that'd be a task in itself. But they actually found each other seemingly organically. I don't know if they met on some kind of psycho granny website that I don't know about, but that is a particular dynamic there. So yeah, they killed two men, but in particularly interesting ways and circumstances. Boom Sante and Kenny Kimes, also in LA, also 2 kills. Interesting dynamic. So Sante, who was known as Dante when she was a kid, she had so many names, this woman, and she had a Dutch mum and an Indian dad. All right, I mean, he was proper, like, you know, traditional Indian style, and her mother was a really pretty Dutch lady. But she had some siblings, Dante, or Sante should we call her. I'll just call her Sante. But she was a psycho when she was a kid. Psycho. Torturing animals, burning his little sister, constantly attacking her. Really brutal. Attacking her mother in many ways, you know, horrible little child. And she grows up like that, and she's a psycho. And she develops into a beautiful woman, actually. She looks very much like Joan Collins, and I don't think that's an accident. I think that was done by design. And she was very intelligent and very charismatic and charming and funny, and all the tools you might need to conquer somebody mentally rather than physically, and physically as well, but not in that way perhaps. And anyway, she marries a rich guy. Well, she doesn't marry him, she hooks into him. A guy called Ken Kimes is a self-made millionaire, and he won't marry her because he's got kids, and he's saying to everyone, now, I'm not marrying that Sante because she wants me money, and I've got kids, and my kids are getting my money. And they actually have a kid, Kenny Jr. Ken Senior dies, she gets nothing, but she's been bringing up Kenny as a total drone, right? Homeschooling, the works. I'm not saying that's bad, I'm saying she employed it so she could control her child. And she brings him up very, you know, almost inappropriately close. And they need to get some money together because, as I say, the father dies. Ken Senior dies, and he leaves them basically nothing, or certainly not enough for the lifestyle that they want. And so they Sante targets a guy called David Kasdeen, starts extorting him, going behind his back, getting loans out in his name, putting his name on documents, forging his signature, the works, you know, the typical kind of fraudy kind of stuff. And when he finds out about it, he's not impressed, he's not feeling it, right? And so he starts making noise about it, and he's saying, what are you doing, and why are you doing this, and why are you doing that? And so they kill him. And they dump him. You know, they put his body in a dumpster. I mean, this was a nice guy that she'd known for years, friend of the ex, Ken Kimes. He's, you know, businessman, and he was terrified of her. They were parking outside his house, and he was telling his family, if you see that car, don't go outside. So she was a scary person, and she was with her son, and so they were working together. This is mother and son. And they go round, and the son goes in, Kenny goes in, walks in behind this guy. Look, I've just come to talk to you about this deal and that deal, and I don't know what's going on. And he turns his back and walks away. Kenny pulls the gun out, bang, shoots him in the back of the head. And then he's dragged him out, put him in the car. They've took him down a back alley in LA. Boom, body in the dumpster. I mean, what kind of mother and son orchestrate and perpetrate something like that? One has to ask. And so they were on the run. They went all over the country doing their thing. And they end up in New York. And there's a woman called Irene Silverman. And she was an ex-ballerina. Little dainty little woman, and she was about 82 years old when she had the misfortune of encountering this filth. And she was renting out rooms in a big New York townhouse, and of course they didn't have the money, or they certainly weren't going to spend it. So they went along, and Kenny Kimes uses a false name and false this and false that, false documentation and ID, and they start renting a room. And she's Irene Silverman, she's keeping a log, strange behaviour day 1, strange comments day 2. And so she knew something was wrong with these people, and they were trying to scam her. They were trying to do what they do. And she got in the way, basically. She pissed them off one way or the other. And so Kenny Kimes attacked her. This is an old lady, right? Probably 5 foot tall. And he's a young man, he's 23 when he does this. He attacks her and strangles her from the front. I mean, I don't want to imagine that. But to attack an old woman and strangle her from the front, killing her anyway is bad. But to do it like that with your hands. And then he's put the body in a suitcase, right? And the suitcase is on wheels. And he's wheeled the body out. He's gone down in the lift with the old woman dead in a suitcase. He's walked out the door into the street in New York. People, cars, cops probably. He's come down the steps, pulling this fucking suitcase with the corpse of an old woman in it. And he's loaded it. He's walked down the street. And he said later, he just walked down the street, nobody looked at him, didn't think twice about it. And he wheels up the suitcase, picks it up, and puts it in the back of the car. Drives the car, same thing, puts the body in a bin, basically, in a container. And that body was never found. We know that happened because he admitted it and talked through it in such detail that it was proven. But in a dumpster, she was put, strangled and dumped in a dumpster, which is why they're called dumpsters. And anyway, by this time the cops are on them for various kinds of things, fraud particularly, and they're heavily suspected of murder. They stake them out. Eventually Kenny turns up, they're waiting, they're spying on the mother. The son turns up and they jump out, boom, nicked. And he pisses himself. So this is the kind of man you're dealing with. He actually fucking wet himself. They get sent down. And they're protesting their innocence. They're in the media all the time. It's a fit-up, it's a set-up, it's this and it's that. This could happen to you, kind of real kind of media campaign. And, we are the martyrs, we are the victims in all this. And so they're doing an interview. I don't know whether it's CBS maybe. He's interviewing Kenny Kimes. And there's a woman. They send a woman to do it. Okay. But he grabs a pen. They're doing the interview. He grabs a pen, grabs her by the neck like that. She's fucking dead. You let me out, right? You let my mother out, or she's dead now. And it took him hours to resolve that situation. So he was very much capable of violence and murder. In the end, he confessed to everything to save his mother's life. So obviously, the mother and son killing team. Have I seen that elsewhere? I mean, you've got Ma Barker and her boys. They used to rob banks, and I'm sure they killed people, but I know they did. But it's just different. Planning a murder. Imagine, I mean, I'm a man. I had a mother. She passed away, but thinking, could I sit there with my mother and plan murders? Especially if people who can't defend themselves, especially using guns on an old man, shooting him in the back of the head, or choking an old woman face to face and then going saying, yeah, it's all right, Mum. I put her in a dumpster. Let's go for lunch. I mean, that's pure psycho. And to see that between a mother and a son, off the charts crazy. I'm going to boom across the room. DC snipers. As you probably already know, but if you don't know, these were two guys who did some sniping, and the very serious crimes. They killed 17 people in total. The kind of sequence of crimes that they committed over a short period of time is crazy. And who were they? They were John Allen Mohammed and Lee Boyd Malvo. Right, two black guys. And one was a soldier. John Allen Mohammed was a soldier who fought in the first Gulf War. So you're talking 1990, whatever, maybe 91. And he was in Iraq. And when he came back, he was just not the same man, according to his wife. He was just, apparently you might say, a shell of his former self, and you might also say that he was warped. He could have had Gulf War syndrome, I suppose. And then there was Lee Boyd Malvo, who was from the island of Antigua, and he was a street kid who never had a chance. So when he comes back, John Mohammed, when he comes back from the Iraq War, he's not the same man, as I say. And he loses his family because his wife leaves him. She can't deal with him, He's got the night terrors, and he just suddenly goes scary in the kitchen, and there's knives everywhere, and she's thinking, fuck this, I can't have me and my kids around this man. So she's trying to get away from him and trying to get the kids away from him, which she succeeds in doing. And John Mohammed is not happy with that. And don't forget, you're antagonising a war veteran here with serious mental problems. And what he does is he seems to adopt this Lee Boyd Malvo, who's a talented young man from this Caribbean island. It's just where the Caribbean starts to hit the Atlantic. And he's got talents. He can draw, he's artistic, he's intelligent, but he's completely lost and malleable. But they form a father-son bond to the point where Lee Boyd Malvo, Lee, calls him dad. Right? And that's what he attaches to, a dad, a father figure, not a psychotic killer. And so what John Mohammed does, is he trains him up. He's taking him to rifle ranges and he's teaching him to be a sharpshooter. And not just that, he's teaching him breathing techniques, and he's brainwashing him into believing, well, for example, that he's trying to create a society of 70 people, 35 boys, 35 girls, that are all obedient to the ways of John Mohammed, and Lee Malvo is going to be like a lieutenant in this, and perhaps the future of the society, because John Allen Mohammed is 41, Lee Boyd Malvo is only 17. He's a kid, right? And he's learning to shoot. What did they do next? They fit up a car. So they've got this station wagon car, and it's basically you pull the back seat down and you get into the back like a poor man's Batmobile, and there's a hole in the back and you can put the gun in there and no one can see you. Tinted windows, no one can see you from the outside, and these guys are sharpshooters. And it's mainly Lee Boyd Malvo who's in the back lying down, controlling his breathing, picking a target, boom, one shot kill. And this is happening in Washington, D.C., the capital of the country. Not to be confused with Washington State, where John Allen Mohammed is from. And they've travelled all that way to do this. And so this is 1 year after 9/11, remember, so people are on edge anyway. And, there was a plane hit the Pentagon, apparently. But something hit the Pentagon, and people were not happy, or were terrified, actually, before this even happened. And so when people started getting shot, and we're talking people at petrol stations or whatever, out in public, going into public buildings, going for the car in a car park, bang, dead. They killed 5 in one day. And of course they were saying it was random because one was young, one was old, one was black, one was white, one's a man, one's a woman. Is that random? It's what the Pink Floyd referred to as random precision. So maybe Johnny knows that. Well, you wore out your welcome with random precision. That one. Shine on your crazy diamond. So random precision is the key here. You're choosing people who are totally different from each other, aren't you? I mean, they wouldn't be so random, so eclectic, if you were literally just shooting the first person you saw. You're deliberately mixing it up, in my opinion. And so the media gets involved. Somebody saw a white van driving away, right? How many fucking white vans are there? Of course you saw one in the area driving, moving down the road. That's what vans do. So CNN in particular, but all of them, they come out, they're in a white van, they're in a white van. And then they're bringing out the fucking experts going, it's a white guy. I'm telling you now, it's a middle-class white guy or a middle-aged white guy. Maybe, he can't get his end away and he's living with his fucking parents. He's living in the basement. I could tell you that. But of course, it wasn't a white van. They had an old beat-up car, but it wasn't a white van. And it wasn't a white guy. It was two fucking black guys. And another thing they did was that John, Mohammed and Lee Malvo, they sent a tarot card with messages on it to the police, very instrumental. And that was supposed to be top secret. It said, don't talk to the police, don't tell the police about this. And it was leaked to the media, and the media banged it straight on television. And so, these two guys, the DC snipers, they took advantage of all this confusion. They used to choose places where there was a white van, and I think they were waiting for somebody to come walking towards the white van and get in it, and then bang. And of course, when somebody goes down, then everyone sees the white van driving away. So they were taking advantage of the media's incompetence and dishonesty. And of course, they were chasing white people, chasing white men, not looking for two black guys because of the media and the constant repetition of this nonsense. And they also antagonised them by putting the fucking tarot card thing on television. So the next thing they do is say, right, okay, we've been calling you, which they had. They'd phoned every police entity they could find. And we've been telling you this and telling you that. We told you not to mention the tarot cards. You did it anyway. So now we've already killed one kid and we're going to kill more. Because they had shot a kid going to school. And we're going to start killing more kids now because you betrayed us. And this is all the media who've done this. So they've got a big part to play in all this. And they were killed. I mean, they were caught after killing all these people. They were caught. And they got sent down. They got sent down for the rest of their lives. I mean, John Mohammed was executed, and Lee Boyd Malvo got a really long sentence. So I don't know if he'll ever get out of prison. He might do. So that was one of the two prevailing theories that, well, there are three. One is that just crazy maniacs wanted to kill some peeps, and they went around the country doing it and then decided to specialise in Washington. Another thing is the Society of 70 motif, and that's what he was trying to do. My personal belief, I'm not the only one who thinks this, is that he wanted to kill his wife. The wife that took John Mohammed wanted to kill his ex-wife, Miriam, she was called, because she got the kids and left him after the war. He's come back to his family, and then his family's gone, so he probably blames her for that. And she was living in that area, so I think that he was going there and he was selecting random victims, so people were just getting shot, so he could shoot his wife, kill his wife, and she would blend in with the crime, you see, and there'd be no type of victim because he was doing it that way. And then he would be able to arrive and say, well, we didn't always get along, but it's all right, I'll take the kids. I think that's what he was trying to do, because he knew that he had no other means of getting his kids back, not justifying it. Psycho. And the father son, the kind of adopted son thing, did this guy find this street kid in Antigua? That's where he found him, on the island of Antigua, and see that he was so desperate and so disassociated from everything, because his mother, this Lee Boyd Malvo's mother, used to run away on the regular and used to say, I'm going to run away, I'm going to leave you if you carry on, and did. And he saw this kind of Black Oliver twist and think, I'm going to fucking use you, I'm going to brainwash you, I'm going to make you think that you're my son, and I'm going to use you for murders. The first murder was in Washington State, where John Washington lived. He sent Lee Boyd Malvo round to this girl's house, and he shot her on the doorstep. So did he deliberately groom this kid and make him feel like he had a father and let him call him dad, knowing all the while that he was just using him to kill his wife and get his real kids back? because that's sick, that's dark, that's really dark, and that's not to mention all the people they killed. So that one's crazy. That's a DC snipers who killed 17 people. Finishing off with Fred and Rose West. Yeah, I'll hit it. I mean, I'm trying to get so much in today. Fred and Rose West, they're from Gloucester in England, right? It's in the south of England, and it's where people talk like that. Everyone seems like a farmer, even if they work in a shop. And so you can be as cool as you want, man. You can get your leather jacket, you can have a Ferrari. If you get out of a fucking Ferrari looking really cool and go, hello, my name's David, and I'm from Gloucester, you're not fucking cool. No way. And Fred West was from Gloucester, so I mean, they probably all sound cool to each other. And Rose West was also from Gloucester, and so they both came from abusive families. I'm not suggesting that's common in Gloucester, but they both came from, I say they all because there's more people around them that did as well. And they came from really abusive families, like hypersexualized. Fred West was having sex with his mum growing up. She kind of introduced it, and it was known, and it was, you know, not a secret. It was, I don't know what you call that. It's like it was some kind of bohemian, incestuous fucking mess inside the house. And he was kind of inducted into this incestuous world. And she and Rose West, who was 12 years younger than Fred, when she was growing up, her father sexually abused her, had sex with her all the time, and even after they were married, Fred and Rosemary West were married and they lived together, the father, Rose's father, used to come round to have sex with his daughter, with her husband in the house, and he knew all about it. So, you know, go in there. This was the thing. This was the way it was. And Fred didn't think anything of it because he grew up having sex with his mum. Fucking what? And so this is what you're getting now. A little bit of background. Fred, good-looking kid. He was a good-looking lad. But he wasn't the brightest. His IQ was 80, which I think is borderline, as they say, retarded. I'm not sure on the correct terminology. I don't want to offend anybody. But he had, I don't know if it's remedial. I really don't know. So he wasn't gifted intellectually. And then he had a crash. He was on his motorbike. He's hit a car head on, smashed his face into it. Didn't do his brain any favours. But it was more like impeding his morality in the frontal lobe and the frontal cortex. And so the main consequence was that he lost all sense of morality. And apart from that, he smashed his face up good and proper. So the looks that he had were gone. He lost his looks and his morality in a smash of the head against a moving vehicle. And he gets married. He marries a woman called Rena. She tries to tame him because he's not fucking right, and that doesn't work. But they have a kid together, and she goes off to Glasgow, and then he meets a girl called Anna McFall, and that's just a problematic, tumultuous relationship because Fred's a fucking maniac. So he kills her and buries her in a field. This is before he even met Rose. So before he's even met Rose, who became Rose West, he's already killed his ex and buried her in a field. So he meets Rose and he charms her. I'm telling you now, she was pretty. Johnny, if you can find a picture of her in black and white sitting on Fred's lap on a couch with long hair like that, looking up at the camera with big eyes, she's a pretty girl. Very pretty girl at one point. But when she was a kid, they called her Dozy Rosie. The other kids called her Dozy Rosie. Low IQ again. Which is not a bad thing. I'm just saying that this is part of the dynamic that they had together. And so he met her. He's ugly. He stinks. But apparently he's charming. Very charming, apparently. And they get together and they become a couple. And it's quite a seedy thing from the beginning, it seems. And they meet this woman called Charmaine. No, what's Caroline? Caroline is the name of the nanny. And so they meet Caroline, and she becomes the nanny. And she's there one day, and Rose just attacks her, drags her into the bedroom, throws her on the bed, and it's Fred that comes in to help Rose rape the nanny. But it's Rose who's the aggressor. This is according to the victim. It's Rose who's the aggressor. They tie her up, they rape her. It's fucking rank, absolutely disgusting. And when you see Fred's face, you know, pictures of him with the big fucking wide face like that, looking crazy. This poor girl tied up, thinking, what the fuck's going on? I thought you guys were going to help me, because this girl as well, Caroline, she was abused as well as a girl growing up. And so now she's just in hell, and that face, and her best friend, who she thought was a friend, Rose, is raping her. Absolutely fucking crazy. And so that was kind of the way that they started. And the reason I mentioned the name Charmaine is because this was one of the daughters. It was Fred's daughter that he had with Rena. So when this is his first wife. So when Fred's in prison for some petty nonsense, Rose kills Charmaine, right? Kills the daughter, Charmaine. And then the mother turns up looking for the daughter. She kills the mother as well. And I'm pretty sure buried them both in the field where Anne McFall had been buried by Fred. And this is how the relationship sets out. So this is the basis of their relationship. And they were fucking together for a long time. They got a house on the infamous now 25 Cromwell Street. Just sounds evil when you say it. It probably didn't, but it does now. 25 Cromwell Street. And for this rape, she reported it to the police. The nanny, Caroline, reports this to the police, and she doesn't testify against them because she's terrified and ashamed. And they got a £25 fine and never did any prison time, and went on to do 14 years of just hell, mania, psychopathy. And the poor girl, Caroline, the nanny, she felt guilty for the rest of her life because she blamed herself for not reporting these two psychos. And it seems like they're in a competition to be the worst. Who's worse? Is it you or me? And I'll kill you, you know. I'll stab you up in your sleep, mate. Don't you worry about that. And he's going back with that in the same way. And look what I can do to this girl. And they were killing them, they were chopping them up, they were burying them under the house. I mean, take it to whatever extreme you want. To the point, actually, where they killed their own daughter, mutual daughter, called Heather, and buried her under the fucking patio in the backyard, and continued to live in the house. And they've got loads of kids. And they say the family joke was, shut your mouth, you'll be under the fucking patio with Heather. And that's what got them caught. Because they got so loose with it that this was a family joke. The kids are going out on the park playing. They're saying, oh yeah, shouting at each other, you'll be under the patio like Heather. And they're already weird. So this becomes the talk of the town. And the police kind of start getting wind of it. And they go around and they dig up the patio. Sure enough, they find bodies, multiple. They found 3 legs. There was one body, at first. They found one body with 3 legs. So they thought, well, obviously, that's not right. And so they kept digging. And then they found, I think it was 9 bodies in the house. Another couple of bodies, as I said before, in a field. A couple of bodies in a previous house. I mean, fucking bodies everywhere they've been. And they get arrested. Fred confesses, much like the Hyndley Brady situation. Fred confesses to this, and Rose blames Fred and says she doesn't know anything about it, which is bullshit. It's demonstrably false. I'm not blaming her either. I'm saying 2 fucking psychos. One admitted it, one didn't. And so Fred, under the pressure of all this, he commits suicide. Or maybe he's just a chicken. Maybe he don't want to face the big boys in prison who might have something to say about his fucking antics and killing little kids and killing women and burying people under his house. Maybe there might be some guys in jail who've got some things to say about that because they can't go and see their wives and daughters. Take it out on this fucking nutter over here, this freak. And that's probably what would have happened. And he thought, well, I'll take the rope way out. And eventually she was convicted of 10 murders, Rose West. 10 murders, that's what she's convicted of. But the police say there could be many more. They really don't know. Eventually, they demolished the house. I mean, it just became 25 Cromwell Street was an international symbol of death and evil and all that is rank in the world. And people didn't want to walk past it. They didn't want to see it. It was upsetting. And so they've levelled it now. It's a path. But I've seen an interview with this nanny, this Caroline, and they did the interview on the path, and she was saying, no, I can still feel his presence, which is interesting. They didn't knock it down enough, you know. So they should have done something else. I don't know what, but they actually knocked the place down. So just to look at it, what's the situation there? Did he turn her into a psychopath? This might be multi-generational, because they were both molested openly as children by the parents, to the point where it was just something you talk about, not something you hide. And maybe they were just warped beyond all recognition of as humans. And when they came together and they kind of justified each other, and, you know, one turns to the other and says, you know, sometimes I feel like killing people. And the other one says, well, why don't we? And it's normalised in that second. And from there, you go where these people went absolutely fucking mental. And so power dynamics and loyalties, I think, are the key words for me here, where whether it's Bonnie and Clyde, it's Myra Hindley and it's Ian Brady, it's Leopold and Loeb, it's Helen Galai and Olga Rutter-Schmidt, it's Sante and Kenny Kimes, it's DC Snipers, or it's Fred and Rose West. You've got power dynamics operating between them. Who's in charge? Are we both in charge? Is it you? Is it me? Do you think it's you, but really it's me? And how do we prove that to each other over a period of time? And loyalties. How far will you go with me? Do you love me really? If you do, you'll watch me do this to this person, and you won't tell the police, you won't tell anyone. In fact, you'll join in with me no matter who it is, even if it's one of your kids. And I think people go over a line into a realm of the universe, literally, or a realm of reality, perhaps, that the rest of us just don't understand. So that's my kind of limited attempt to understand these power dynamics between these people, what they did and why. And it's limited, I think, because I am not a crazy fucking psycho. And I'm happy about that. I hope you gained something from this, enjoyed it as much as I did, in the darkest possible way. Boom to you, boom to me, power hour people. Say yes.